Okay, we're going to try a brief overview of Excel pivot tables. There'll be a few examples at the tail end of this that we can actually play with later. I'll try and post them to Confluence as well. One of the first things that you might find useful is to take data that's already in a spreadsheet and then generate a pivot table with it. And it's almost like falling off a log. You just basically insert a pivot table. It grabs what data you have on your screen, and then basically gives you a chance to create a pivot table and work with it. A more common way to go about this is to have some data in a database. You need an ODBC connector, access to MS Query, and then you can drive into a pivot table. And this is how SSG BusinessTel works in some regards. You need access to data in the SQL database, and you can get access in a pivot table, and then use that pivot table for analysis. In general, a pivot table has this nature of crosstabs. The more simplistic way to use it is to basically take two dimensions, if you will, of a row and a column. This is the basic nature of a pivot table. That you end up with a crosstab as your display. However, it kind of starts off on the right in some regards, where you have a field list that appears with multiple dimensions and multiple measures. So the dimensions, I guess, can be state or customer name of the region of the country that the customer is in. The dimensions can go into the rows and the columns, and can also be a filter. The measures goes into that values bucket in the lower right-hand corner. So that's kind of the distinction. So that the dimensions can go into the rows and columns, the filters, the measures go into the values. And that is generally the nature of a pivot table, whether it comes from data in a spreadsheet or whether it comes from data in a database. So if you're ready, we're going to try 3 examples. One, where you have data from a spreadsheet going into a pivot table. 2, data from a database going into a pivot table. And we're going to use some time track data. And then the third, there's a financial metrics spreadsheet that I've worked on before and published that we're going to try and do an update on the fly. So just some arbitrary data, nothing special about it. And I was just trying to kind of come up with some sales data that was sort of arbitrary. Insert pivot table. So kind of like falling off a log, it knows what ranges you have on your screen as far as data is concerned. And basically will give you a pivot table in a separate sheet. So here's the sales data, which is the raw data, and here's the pivot table. Okay. And the only measure, I guess there are 2 measures. One of them is quantity, one of them is the amount. So for example, if you just drag the amount into the values, so since amount is a measure, it'll fit into the value screen, value box fairly well. Usually I change it to a comma format, so that's easiest to display. And then things become kind of easy. So for example, if you need to know some things by product line, you could drag and drop product line into a row. If you also need to see things by region, you can put things into the region column, the region into the column bucket, and it would give you a crosstab by region and by product line. If for some reason you decided not to do this by product line, but you wanted to do it by customer instead, then it's an exchange of dimensions in that row column. If you needed both, customer and product line, then you can basically do a drag and drop this way, so that you have the customer and the product line together. If you didn't want the amounts, but you wanted the quantity instead, you can do an exchange fairly quickly to get the products and the amounts. Also, finally, I guess my last bit of demonstration here, if you needed to see the quantities and the amounts by product line, you could do it that way. So this display is a little bit confusing, but the quantity and the amounts, quantity and the amounts, quantity and the amounts. To make it a little bit clearer, you could take out the region. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess one last bit of something. I guess we could do this with a customer. So if you wanted to see the quantity and the amounts for a particular customer, you can put customer in the filter, and then pick one of these customers, and see the breakdown by product line, quantity and amount. Okay, any questions so far?